surrender your ships, we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own.
One of the largest, if not the largest, threat to the United Federation of Planets is that of the Borg Collective. An advanced civilization, if you can call it a civilization, that cannot be corrupted by Starfleet ideals and is ultimately able to completely bypass the defenses of most known militaries. This monolith would seemingly be destroyed and its threat capacity so diminished as to not rise again by mere humans. The real question is, how? Or more importantly, why? The dirty little secret is, though, that it isn't Starfleet that defeated them. Not some new technology, not even Picard and the power of familial love. It was one individual, the Queen. Let's just get into it.
I am the beginning, the end, the one who is many.
Before we delve too deep, let's define the Queen, or at least try. The Borg Queen is an enigma, as she doesn't make much sense to the overall operations of the collective. More on that later. Their overall goal, their quest, was to change the entirety of the universe, to take the galaxy and everything beyond and turn it into something that was cohesive, that was a perfect unit, where there was no pain, no war, nor any suffering. A new order. No one individual was better than the other. That was perfection. The Queen adds an unnecessary and destabilizing component to all of this. It's hard to define her role and how it continues to make sense as originally presented. Some have attempted to explain her as a component of the whole, the actual voice and humanized elements to better understand that she doesn't actually control the Borg, even though there is near irrefutable evidence that she does.
Vessel identified. USS Voyager. We will pursue and assimilate.
No. They haven't compromised our security. Let the vessel continue.
It's also been suggested that the Queen works as the controller of various hives, that every cube or perhaps every unicomplex has a Borg Queen. Again, this goes against the original convention of perfection, but that doesn't change the possibility that it is what it is. It does, though, create a huge problem because this is ultimately a weak point, one we see in the Next Generation, in Voyager, and in Picard. So much of a weak link, I wonder if that wasn't the point. The Queen, by most accounts, was ultimately a being with emotion. She was petty, jealous, selfish, and lonely. This isn't only something that you can find on Memory Alpha and in many debate forums, but it is proven on screen. And it's the antithesis of what the Borg are, or at least were. And that would be their downfall. We know that the Borg effectively have the entire universe as its enemy, and we know that, while militarily very few could stand up to them, a vast number of civilizations looked at other ways to defeat the collective. This includes biological and technological attempts at their destruction. As an example, the United Federation of Planets wanted to introduce an image that ultimately would cause them to go insane. The Brunali presented a genetic component to defeat the Borg. And this is just off the top of my head with only 2 species. I bet if I delved into Voyager, I'd find other ways that they tried to combat the Borg. And when you consider how large and vast the universe is and all of the species we've seen in Star Trek, it can be barely fathomable what enemies they would have to go up against and the capabilities of said enemies. And what's intriguing to me is the more that you study this, most all species try to fight the Borg with slow means. They can't win an actual fair fight, so they decide to use other methods, ones that I've suggested. And maybe, just maybe, the Queen was one of these methods. We know that the Borg Queen probably did not originally exist as a part of the collective. When she interacted with Seven, she said that she was from species 125. She wasn't created nor born as a part of the Borg. She was captured as a small child.
Part of me is still human. I will not assist in their destruction.
We all originated from lesser species. I myself came from species 125.
We don't know what species she was, but what if, and just hear me out, species 125 ultimately had the last laugh. If the Queen was assimilated and incorporated into the collective after its creation, she could have begun a sort of coup and enacted the ultimate destruction of the Borg. Perhaps she was so psychically powerful that she overrode the Borg's presence, and thus that's why when we see her, she comes off immature. We find that she needs a mate, that she gets lonely, and she has tantrums. These things aren't a part of the collective, but they would be a part of an adult who never really got to grow up when they were a child. she doesn't know how to act. Or maybe there was a virus within her that corrupted everything and turned them into subservient drones, but she wasn't able to fully regain her consciousness, and thus this internal battle occurs. That's why we see sometimes she seems to act like the Borg, and other times she acts like an individual. All of this makes sense and plugs a lot of holes when you think about it. During Q-Who and all of the next generation before First Contact, we never see the Queen. Not once. In fact, I think it's arguable that the Queen at that time may not have existed. Or perhaps the Borg we see here weren't corrupted yet, as she was only impacting elements in the Delta Quadrant. She says she had been there for hundreds of years, but she's not exactly trustworthy. When you consider how the Borg work, how we see them operate in TNG the series, and then everything we see at First Contact and after, just makes sense. That said, I know that people will bring up the fact that Picard mentioned the Queen was on the cube at the Battle of Wolf 359. But was she?
I remember you. You were there all the time.
We know that Picard begins to hear the voices of the Borg before the invasion of Sector 001. This happens for quite a bit in universe. It seems to have taken hours, if not longer. Now, this could have been Jean-Luc's connection to the Borg and him just hearing their thoughts, but what if it was some sort of download? What if the Queen corrupts the Borg that she comes in contact with? She has this software that's downloaded to their brains, even ex-Borg, so that they just accept her as a fact. That would make sense if you were an element that didn't exist before and you needed to corrupt those who hadn't been corrupted. Hell, it would be very ironic because when you think about it, in the real world, there are actual ant queens that can do this. Queens from other hives that will come into another ant colony and corrupt their workers and their soldiers. Obviously, the writers didn't do this on purpose, but hell, that's pretty fun when you think about it. It also makes sense when you consider her death in First Contact. It destroys all of the Borg on that ship, making her link and psychic connection near required. It honestly fills a lot of holes, as I pointed out, and makes the ultimate demise of the Borg make sense. And in the end, it's kind of ironic when you think about it. The Borg weren't defeated by the mighty Starfleet. They weren't destroyed by some new age Romulan weapon. They weren't even wiped out of existence by the Q. They were removed from the universe, nearly all eradicated, by one small girl. One frightened small girl. But these are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.